visto che... Buonasera a tutti, signore e signori, e benvenuti a questa nuova live. Allora, ragazzi, questa sera vi dico... eh, questa sera, raga... Questa sera praticamente avevo in mente di fare altro. Stasera avrei voluto tornare su Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, ma per una semplice ragione. Per via del fatto che domani, sia domani che sabato, ho ben due tornei online di 3S, ma lo faremo più tardi. In questo momento, raga, vorrei fare una reaction a un podcast che gira su YouTube da parte del canale Triple KO, che è gestito da tre youtuber, è gestito da tre, diciamo, da tre player, che è un podcast che va principalmente durante i weekly, che al suo interno ci sono diversi, almeno, ci sono diversi, almeno, i presentatori principali sono Matt McMuscles, Maximilian Dude e ovviamente Justin Wong. Ho detto, devo dire, devo essere onesto, non ho visto fino ad adesso, non mi è mai capitato di seguire nemmeno una puntata del podcast che hanno fatto. Però, diciamo, la puntata in questione che hanno fatto la settimana scorsa, perché comunque è stata ricaricata solo oggi, perché ripeto, durante il fine settimana a quanto pare lo fanno. Ho detto, perché eventualmente non provarci? Ho detto, perché magari dire no, non provare a vedere di cosa si tratta. L'argomento che hanno trattato sono stick e controller. Argomento, raga, che sapete a me fa molto piacere. Aspettate. Ah, a proposito, una cosa, raga, mi stavo dimenticando. Me lo dimentico sempre, purtroppo. Prima di iniziare, perché sennò poi.
Su cui andare ad
Un secondo soltanto, raga. Mo' iniziamo. Chat a comparsa. Così almeno posso chiudere qua. Ok. Eh, ok, aspettate. Bene, ci siamo. Abbasso il volume se no poi è troppo alto.
What's up, everybody? We are back with another episode of Triple KO, and there's a hot topic going along, especially with a lot of button pressing, lever using. But we're gonna talk about that. But we are introduced by myself, Maximilian, and Matt McMuscles. How are you guys all doing?
I'm in a button bashing mood today, Justin. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm ready to tell you about my
Anzi,
stick
no.
stories.
Se metto il volume troppo alto rischio che...
Yeah. So if you guys haven't heard, on Twitter there is a giant.
Devo trovare il giusto
discussion going on
compromesso.
about how hitbox controllers are cheating. and then how joysticks
Hitbox.
are just kind of prehistoric from the past, and the pad controllers, they're just kind of in the middle. They're like, well, I'm a pad player, what do I do, right?
Che tra l'altro voglio ricordare, l'Hitbox allo stato attuale è uno, se parliamo a livello di arcade stick, fra gli arcade stick è quello che è più ricercato, quello che è più utilizzato, però sta prendendo parecchio piede, tanto che l'azienda stessa sta iniziando a sponsorizzare sempre più player, tra cui al momento fra i player sponsorizzati c'è, mi sembra, Daigo Meara, Super Akuma, anche se Super Akuma se non sbaglio è stato uno dei primi che ha iniziato a collaborare. Mi sembra ci sia Aslanash se non sbaglio, non mi ricordo. Cioè, comunque molti player hanno avuto l'onore e l'onere di provare questa periferica amata e odiata da molti, nata intorno al 2010 su per giù se non sbaglio, che all'inizio non era nemmeno consentita ai tornei. Cioè, era proprio una periferica che non si poteva nemmeno nominare. Mamma mia.
But a lot of things we're talking about Hitbox, how inputs, how things are much easier to do, especially from like games where you have to like practice, like Tekken. Tekken's a good example, right? Tekken
Appunto.
has one of these really hard moves called Electric Wind God Fist from like the Mashimas.
Madonna, il primo Tekken Tag.
It's really hard to do it. I'm gonna be honest with you. You can't just do it like.
È vero, anche questo è vero. C'è da dire che l'hitbox, come appunto è stato riferito da Justin, permette di semplificare gli input che normalmente con l'arcade stick tradizionale, un arcade stick tradizionale tipo questo, non riuscirebbe, tipo, ad esempio, l'elettrico. L'elettrico è avanti, giù, diagonale, basso. Ma bisogna farlo con un certo tempismo. È un po' come è la stessa questione dello Shoryuken. Se giù diagonale basso più pugno destro. No, più il coso, sì, più il pugno destro, quindi il triangolo principalmente. È una mossa che, raga, può sembrare facile, ma almeno se minchia ne fate una, raga, è una puttanata. Basta solo che prendete l'input al momento giusto e vi esce. Ma se dovete metterne in catena tipo con Kazuya, con Yachi, 2, 3, anche 4 in alcuni casi, raga, vi posso assicurare che c'è da sclerare. Con Devil Jin mi sembra, raga, se ricordo bene, con Devil Jin non c'è tutta questa gran possibilità invece di fare Kosu, di fare troppi elettrici per continuare, per poi continuare la combo.
Right away, it's not a first try thing. I would say I still can't even do it properly on the joystick on the left side. Left side I can't do Electro Wing God Fist, but the right side I can. But I saw a video where this is the first time this person was playing Tekken, and he was playing on a hitbox or a cross up, one of the controllers, and he was doing it like 22 times straight. How do you guys feel about that?
Interesting. So it's like, or where the topic is like how sticks and controllers have changed like over the years and stuff like that, and now even for somebody that is relatively new with a relatively high level entry of difficulty can do something super easily. I mean, maybe that person's just good at that.
Poi ovviamente, raga, ricordiamo che ogni periferica è relativa,
just
cioè
like, yeah, this is actually not that hard, and other people find that thing
periferica
relatively
relativa,
hard.
non è
It's
che-
hard for me, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I was thinking like I had this discussion with a bunch of people in my community about this, and you know they're like, "Hey Justin, are you gonna switch to the hitbox? Because that's the popular thing to do. Everybody is switching to the hitbox." And I have some. I clearly have some
Sì.
hitboxes just because.
Sì, è vero, perché mo questa cosa che, diciamo, l'azienda che li realizza gli hitbox sta praticamente sponsorizzando manetta. Mo tutti quanti praticamente vogliono giocare con l'hitbox. È un po' la stessa questione del 2009, che è successa nel 2009 con l'uscita di Street Fighter 4, quando fra Mad Catz e Capcom scattò quella famosa collaborazione per non solo realizzare i famosi stick a tema, ma anche per via del fatto che Mad Catz praticamente era, ricordiamo, lo sponsor di molti pro player, tra cui lo stesso Justin, e praticamente tutti, ma tutti volevano o utilizzavano i prodotti Mad Catz, soprattutto in fatto di arcade stick.
why not? I want to see what all the craze is about. And they're fun. They're definitely very fun to play with. I would say that's for sure.
Che poi addirittura per dire
But for a
Daigo
person
si
that
fece
plays
fare
a
un
lot of
hitbox,
old games,
ricordo,
like myself,
che
like,
venne
and like all,
bannato
like
dal
both
combo
of us together,
breaker del
we play a lot of the
2018,
games
mi
where
sembra si fu.
motions,
Non
inputs
vorrei
are, I
dire,
would say,
venne
more
bannato il
strict.
suo
There was no
hitbox perché
input
era
buffers.
tutto,
This is where
era
I'd
pieno
say
di
I
talmente
would not
antico gli
switch
input
because I do
che
think using hitbox
era uno
personally
schiaffo morale a
on
chi
older
utilizzava quello
games
tradizionale
are much
praticamente, una
harder
roba del
compared
genere, non mi
to modern
ricordo.
fighting games where input buffers are much easier to do.
Right. Yeah, and because I think it'd be good to get some perspective.
Che poi c'è da dire anche, devo smetterla di interrompere ogni 3x4, però c'è da dire che, a proposito, mi ero dimenticato di fare una cosa, mi ero dimenticato, vabbè, poi mo la faccio intanto. Stavo dicendo, c'è anche da dire un'altra cosa, c'è anche da dire. Mo l'hitbox soprattutto da molti player viene definito come la periferica perfetta solo per i picchiaduro moderni, per quelli retro e praticamente dicono no, non è adatto, cioè per chi fa retro gaming non è adatto. Raga, è la più grande stronzata di questo mondo, ma sapete perché? Perché io ho visto moltissimi player giocare, almeno c'è stato un player su Twitch che questo streamava spesso e che giocava con l'hitbox, si allenava con l'hitbox a Heritage for the Future, si allenava a Marvel vs Capcom 2, o per dire se vedete un torneo di Vampire Savior, un esempio, un torneo di Vampire Savior, vedete che un 50% dei player giocano tutti con l'hitbox, giocano. Ho visto anche per dire al combo breaker di quest'anno al torneo di 3S, ci sono stati diversi player che utilizzavano gli hitbox, ma perché come periferica si sta diffondendo sempre di più. Mamma mia. Tanto che raga la trovate pure li trovate di qualità anche su siti come AliExpress per intenderci.
On all this because I think
E per
perspective
quelli
is
là
a big
intendo a
thing,
prezzi come 100
especially with
euro.
like the stick
100,
argument, the
150
controller
euro.
argument. We should talk about the legacy of that, by the way, right? Like, I don't know if you guys, I mean, I'm sure you two do, but the Street Fighter 4 era, remember the controller shaming, the controller sham that happened around that time frame, and how that sort of evolved and changed over the years. Much less you're going back to like the 90s where sticks were barely even available. You had to know some person in a dark, seedy corner of the streets to get like an arcade
Sì,
stick
vabbè,
that
quando
actually
arrivarono gli
functioned on a
arcade
PS1
stick
or something like that.
durante il
So
periodo
I
di
think
Street Fighter 4
it'll be
sembrava
nice
di
to
essere
like
tornati
get
negli anni
our
90.
perspective. We should go back to like let's go
Ricordiamo
back to
che i
like the 90s
Mad Cats
and figure
furono
out
anche
how
i
this all
primi,
started. But
che
from the
erano
perspective
veramente
you're talking
buoni
about,
come
Jay,
qualità.
like hitboxes.
Cioè,
My first experience with the hitbox was in 2011 at Evo 2011, and the guy that made Hitbox
nel
was
2011.
doing money matches with us on Marvel 3 in our room. And I got to try it out personally just to see like what it was like because I just heard all this, you know, hubbub
Quindi
about
nel
it.
2011 è
And
nato come
yeah,
periferica.
within 30 minutes, I was doing full Dante combos in Marvel 3.
Mamma mia.
And those are in vanilla Marvel 3
Ecco
those were
perché non
difficult because they required
ecco
double
perché vede
motions.
bannato.
It wasn't like you double tap the button to get your special to come out. No, you had to do double fireball or double like Shoryu motions on like a ton of stuff on vanilla Marvel 3 Dante.
Per
So
dire,
they
molti
started making
giocatori
harder.
di Marvel vs
And
Capcom,
it was like wow, this
cioè,
is I
per loro
noticed myself
l'hitbox
personally
è
doing
stata una
double
manna dal
motions
cielo.
on stuff like double
Soprattutto
fireball
fra i
forward,
player
double fireball
italiani.
back, or double Shoryu or anything weird like that. Significantly easier when it came to a hitbox. However, half circle motions are a huge bitch. Half circle, quarter circle back, half circle forward. I was like, oh, this is a nightmare on this.
Yep.
Once again, some things become easier, but some other things aren't nearly as flow as much as like something with a lever.
Yeah. My experience with hitboxes is very minimal. Don't have one, but the couple of times I've been to some tourneys here and there, just as a casual, and have been at Evo, at setups at the indie station. They had some, and I'm like, this is
weird.
Then like Max said, after 30 minutes, it's like being in a hot tub. Yeah, at first you're like, I don't.
Io ho un hitbox comunque, raga, ad oggi non l'ho ancora provato, mai provato.
It's definitely very interesting.
Ma c'è da
to
dire
use
che
because,
ormai
like you said,
per
a
i
lot of things
picchiaduro,
become
da quando
possibly easier.
questo genere è
I think
sbarcato
when
su
I first
PC,
played Street Fighter 5,
e
for example, on a
praticamente
hitbox,
qualunque
after 30 minutes,
periferica,
I'm like,
qualunque
I want to take this to a tournament.
curcito
And I
di
did. I
periferica è
took it to a
diventata
tournament. I got
utilizzabile.
a pools. with it, and then eventually I switched back to joystick because I didn't feel confident to fight against like some of the best players.
Perché diciamo
with the
che
hitbox
fino al
yet. But I
2012
definitely had,
forse
like, a
uno dei primi
joystick and a
picchiaduro ad
hitbox
essere
with
arrivato
me
su
for a
PC,
tournament just because I
ad
was
essere
so
stato portato su
curious
PC,
on if I can
fu
actually play
Kosu,
with the hitbox.
Ultra Street
in
Fighter
tournament
4 è
with
stato
it,
quello che ha
right?
dato il là
But then I remember talking
ha
to
dato
the owner of
proprio
Hitbox, and he said, yeah, the
il
hitbox
là
was
per far
created
sì che la
to
serie,
play
i vari
Marvelous
capitoli
Capcom
arrivarono
2.
su
He
i
said
vari
this
giochi
is how
arrivarono.
you should play Marvelous
O
Capcom 2
almeno
on, right?
ci
And
furono altri
I
casi,
tried it, and I'm like,
tipo,
I don't
tipo
understand.
i
I don't know
Blaze
how to play
Blue
Marvel 2 on this
o i
hitbox
primi
because it's so
Guilty
hard.
Gear, per
Because
carità.
it's so much
Però
movement going on with like that requires a joystick.
And that's the big deal is your perspective, right?
Yeah.
Your perspective of Marvel 2 has either been on American bat stick or like you know Sanwa Japanese sticks and stuff like that. So you switching from something that you have like 20 years of muscle memory on to something that's like it's either
per
it's
dire,
literally
con Marvel
ingrained
2 è
into your
meglio
DNA
giocare con
and then
American,
just saying like do something different.
con Ameri-
It'll
con
probably
roba
not
americana,
immediately come
con le
to
competenze
the
americane.
forefront of like, oh yeah, this is easy, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot to unlearn. It's like they have to strip Justin down to like the bare core of his being,
sinew.
and then build bones, and then they have to build them back up again because yeah, like that's 20 years of experience. And even like for me, like sticks were just like this exotic thing that you ever knew one person had in the early 2000s. But as soon as Street Fighter 4, like everyone just the sticks. There's just
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we're into sticks now. Cool.
Yeah.
It was like I always came into these things too late. Like by the time I realized.
Cioè, facciamoci il conto, ragazzi, che ad oggi per noi giocare con l'arcade stick, avere un arcade stick, magari per chi se lo può permettere, cioè, è una cosa normale. Ma quando nel 2009 iniziarono a arrivare i primi modelli fatti da Mad Cats, che erano, cioè, era praticamente un boom, cioè, veniva data la possibilità ai player, cioè, di avere una vera e propria periferica alternativa. O comunque avere una periferica che valesse veramente la pena, perché fino ad allora sì, esistevano gli arcade stick, già, basti pensare che la Ori era una delle prime che a realizzare questo tipo di periferica già dagli anni 90, cioè sulle maggiori console dell'epoca. Basti pensare il Namco Arcade Stick, è stata opera sua, è stata. Però era comunque stick che, cioè, erano letteralmente un surrogato. Erano un vero e proprio surrogato, ma di quelli proprio scarsi. Di quelli scrausi dell'esperienza arcade da sala. Invece con gli stick realizzati che sono usciti dal 2009 in poi, avevi una vera e propria esperienza. Vera e propria. Che si andava a riavvicinare molto a quello che erano il feeling in sala giochi. Mamma mia.
Was like, oh, video games that you play with little plastic instruments, music games like Rock Band and Guitar Hero. Oh, that's what everyone. Okay, cool. And then I first bought one for Guitar Hero 3.
Yeah.
Like the not so great one compared because the developers switched. And then everyone's like, no, Guitar Hero, that's lame now. Now it's all about Rock Band. And it's like, I'm like, I can't keep up. Same thing with sticks. By the time I got like into Street Fighter 4 enough to play, like, you know, everyone's pretty good, and I still have my Blanca pad from
Madò.
Mad Cats, you know, I'm in.
Io per dire, il Fight Pad, cioè, il Fight Pad, altra grandissima periferica. Cioè, questo praticamente era un pad proprio a 6 tasti che andava a ripercorrere, che andava a riprendere a grandi linee quello che era il pad del Sega Saturn. Perché il pad Sega Saturn era praticamente della stessa forma. Cioè, solo che l'unica differenza è che questo qua è proprio studiato specificatamente per chi gioca ai picchiaduro. Per chi giocava ai picchiaduro. Ed era soprattutto una manna dal cielo per chi giocava da Xbox 360. Perché, raga, i pad Xbox 360 per giocare ai tempi a Street Fighter 4, Tekken 6 erano un vero e proprio incubo. Cioè, non che il pad PlayStation 3 fosse migliore, per carità, ma comunque di certo era più comodo. Cioè, diciamo, questi tipi di pad erano anche una buona alternativa, magari a chi effettivamente dici no, magari no, per chi non vuole lo stick, ma vuole comunque qualcosa di qualità che possa risultare migliore. Oh, c'erano questi che, cazzo, se erano buoni. Ma è tutta una questione di comodità, ragazzi. Alla fine, ricordiamo, c'era Smug, il mortacci sua, che quello con il pad della 360 rompeva il culo a tutti usando Dudley. Non sto scherzando. E ad oggi, per dire, con il pad della PS4, su Fightcade rompe il culo. Giocando a 2 Turbo, giocando a 3S, giocando a quel cazzo, rompe il culo a chiunque.
Enjoying that, and by the time I actually got like a not the
Per quel poco
not
che lo
the
seguo,
really good
perché
TE
lo seguo
stick, it's
raramente.
like the base level one.
Oh, the white
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
The standard.
Madonna,
edition one.
ragazzi. Il vecchio SE, una delle più grandi, diciamo, truffe, tra virgolette. Ma perché questo stick era una truffa? A parte che era una robetta tanta. Era una roba tanta, più o meno, su per giù. Ma poi aveva dei tasti che letteralmente utilizzavi un quarto d'ora. Non sto scherzando. E poi li dovevi buttare per quanto facevano schifo. La sua fortuna è stato il fatto che praticamente era modificabile. I tasti è stato uno dei primi, appunto, che aveva i tasti sostituibili insieme alla serie Tournament Edition. E praticamente dici: no, vabbè, prendi i pezzi di ricambio e lo trasformavi praticamente in un TA in miniatura. Lo trasformavi, il che non era roba da poco, onestamente parlando.
Oh
That's
no,
all I
those,
could have-
yeah, that one was bad.
Mamma mia.
Oh, but that it was good for me.
E tra l'altro
It
comunque
was the only one
costava,
I could
porca
afford,
miseria,
and,
costava
you know, a
sulle
couple years later,
80-90
I
euro,
did
costava per i
love
tempi.
my Killer Instinct 2013.
Madonna.
Like TE, oh, I loved that for a while, but
Il TE2.
eventually, where I was living, I'm like, I don't have a place
Che
to
uscì
keep
prima,
that.
uscì prima la versione
And I
One
think
e
it's at,
poi
like, my parents'
quella
house
per
or
la
something now.
PlayStation.
Man, you
It's just there.
you
Il
take me
TE2
back to
normale
Guitar
ad
Hero,
oggi è
just
considerato
straight,
uno,
core memory
non
unlocked
considerato uno,
shit,
no,
where I
non è il
remember missing
massimo.
out on
Quello
one and
Plus,
two
il TE2
and
Plus
just
invece
ignoring
ancora.
it, and for
È
some
abbastanza buono,
reason, me
soprattutto
and
se si
my
usa la
wife at that
PC.
time frame had started
Cioè
listening
c'ha
to
poco
Dragon
input lag
Force, and I was like, oh, Guitar Hero 3 has
veramente
Dragon Force on it, I'll
ti
just
permette
try
di
this
giocare
game.
benissimo.
I think I was like, I literally, my hands hurt. I played it so much. Like, I couldn't, like, this stupid baby game for babies is so much fucking fun.
There's still songs where I'll hear it in a mall or like on the radio. I'm like, oh, that's my Guitar Hero
Yep,
song,
that's your
baby.
Guitar Hero. You know, I do, sorry, I do that for Elite Beat Agents still to this
Me
day.
too, me too.
That game was so
Actually.
good.
That's-
Yeah,
Oh,
that-
Skater Boy, Avril Lavigne,
yep.
love it. Speaking of which, I'm sure someone at Evo played something with a Guitar Hero
Oh yeah,
controller.
People have-
Like it
people
has
have
to happen.
competed and done
Ah,
well
sì.
in Guilty Gear.
Ecco, c'è sto tizio, porca troia. Ha pensato bene. Sto tizio fu un fottuto genio. Pensò bene praticamente di prendere la chitarra di Guitar Hero e modificarla, facendola diventare appunto uno stick. Porca troia, quell'anno sorprese tutto. Mi sembra questo giocatore di coso di Street Fighter era. Fatto sta rompette il culo a molta gente, rompette. Cioè, ma non è l'unico caso, per dire, Initial T, il giocatore canadese di Guilty Gear, quello ancora oggi è considerato ai tempi di XRD Revelator era considerato uno dei più forti ed era un autentico mostro che giocava praticamente con il volante della Logitech, giocava con il volante, cioè porca troia. Questo per dire no, che per i picchiaduro tu puoi usare qualunque controller. L'esempio lampante era.
Your Strive with the
Cioè,
Guitar Hero controller. I'm
no,
pretty sure.
vabbè.
yeah, there's a guy that
Done
mod.
well?
Done well.
vabbè,
Yeah,
raga.
yeah. There's a guy.
Cioè, comunque
that
tanto
mods,
rispetto
his
ci
Guitar
vuole
Hero
per
controller to actually be a Guitar Hero joystick.
anche Luffy,
Like, I
per
don't know,
dire,
what do you call that,
Luffy
the
un altro
drum where
esempio,
you, like,
se lo
hit the
mostrano
The strum, yeah.
con il
with
pad
the
della
strum,
PS1.
He took that
Mamma
out
mia.
and that became a joystick, and then the buttons itself. That's the actual button pressing for like light punch, medium punch, and so forth.
Yeah,
and
and
so
he
forth.
holds it like a guitar still, but instead it just, you know, it looks like he's jamming ass and, you know, trying to get a TOD combo with Guilty Gear Strive.
Every time I lose faith in humanity, someone brings it back.
Yeah, the only problem with him playing on the Guitar Hero controller is that he does not main Eno. He should.
He
because
should.
It would, it would be
that's a
perfect sense.
bummer.
I think
That's such
he's
a
a, I
gimmick.
think he's a Soul player because I know he's from because he's from SoCal and I played him actually and I actually played him in the Grand Blue Fantasy Versus tournament, like the launch party where they had the first Grand Blue tournament before COVID. And
Ma
I
no, forse
played him,
giocatore di
and then
Guilty
I was
Gear
like- I
era.
was so intimidated because I'm like,
Mamma mia.
what is about to happen? I'm so confused. Like I'm like, how does this work and everything? He's standing up, he's not sitting down. So I'm like looking up above him and everything. We're trying to
Before-
play him.
Before we start getting into super weird controllers, because I feel like I even have
Yeah.
some stories of this where I was first exposed to it and like, you could do what? I think we should go back to our first impressions of like, how the hell do you even control fighting games? Because now we're at a point, we're at like quite literally a community juncture now where I haven't chimed in on this conversation at all. I don't know if Justin has much either, but a lot of very big figureheads amongst the fighting game community are sort of butting heads as of right now with the idea that if you put money and time into this and get a statistical advantage, is that fair? And I think that comes from the mentality of boomer shit, which is all stuff that we're into. And the boomer shit mentality is the fact that, oh no, there's a standard. There's a standard arcade standard, right? And that arcade standard still pretty much echoes throughout a lot of the fighting game community to this day, where the game is played a certain way with certain controllers. There's no extra buttons. Like, even if you played like games like Tekken, you know, until a certain degree where you can map extra buttons to combination attacks, like LP plus RP or something like that, right? That was considered like, no. And then later
Appunto.
on, they actually
Appunto,
literally suck in
esatto.
controllers onto Tekken 5 arcade machines so that you could map whatever the hell you want
Beh, è
to
vero,
do,
perché
whatever.
c'è da dire allora, fino ai picchiaduro nei picchiaduro più vecchi fino a Tekken 5 ad esempio, fino a Tekken 6 anche. Cioè, praticamente si usavano soltanto, quanti erano i tasti? 4. 4 anche nei King of Fighters, quanti erano i tasti? 4 non andavano usati. In Street Fighter 6, cioè, oddio, Street Fighter la sua struttura l'ha sempre lasciata tale e quale, diciamo che su console, a parte il fatto dell'L1 e L2 che ti faceva la shortcut che riguardava i 3 pugni e i 3 calci, ma quella era una sorta di option che era optional, quindi se la volevi la utilizzavi o se no no, o più che altro diciamo era comoda per chi gioca da pad, perché non è che tu premi 3 tasti contemporaneamente, cioè rischiando di diventare praticamente un mongoloide, cioè vabbè.
So, if we go back to the start, right, the 90s, we all start on arcade sticks. Like, this is where the everyone sort of cut their teeth on arcade sticks, and I'm pretty sure for the majority of us, it's on old ass bat sticks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, old ass bat sticks that maybe broken down for the most part, right? The buttons and the joysticks and everything. But yeah, you rarely
Mi sa che
saw
Max
anything
sta
that's
tirando-
not a joystick.
Che
I
poi
think
vabbè,
he
uno
might have
dei
a Moss
migliori,
stick.
He's gonna
uno dei
pull out
primi
some
all'epoca
bullshit.
No,
a
it's
livello di
a
qualità
Moss stick,
che erano
like
più
a
buoni era il
giant
Mass.
Moss stick, right? Because that's what the one stick that people owned when going to like Mars Capcom 2 tournaments and like their tournaments during that time, or the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin, the one where there's literally no brand, no
il
logo
Sega
on it. It was
Dreamcast
just
Green
like this
Goblin Arcade
plastic,
Stick.
literally green buttons and a green
Era
ball
buono,
top,
per
and we can
carità,
just call it
però
the Green
purtroppo-
Goblin. And that was like $40 at my local game store, right? And I thought that one was like pretty darn awesome. What did he get?
Yeah.
Did he get the
I
Green
know which one
Goblin?
you mean.
Era buono,
Did he bring the
però
Green Goblin?
Do
diciamo
you have
che
a Green
comunque-
Goblin? What did you
I don't
pick
have a
up
Green
that?
Goblin, but
Madò!
Jesus, man.
Lo
yes.
stick
Remember,
per i
look at the
15
size
anni
of
della
this
serie
thing.
Street
It's freaking
Fighter. Questo
huge.
era
This is like
questo era
the oldest
compatibile con
school
PlayStation
bat stick that I can
2
remember outside of
e prima Xbox
a
era
Moss stick,
compatibile per...
right? And the old
Yeah.
school Moss sticks were a
Mamma
little
mia.
higher quality, but I think that's what's inspired this. So this
Questo
is
per dire
for
un
anyone
altro,
that wants to feel
mamma mia,
ancient as
questo
shit right
era
now.
uno stick
This
che
is
per
what
i
I'm showing
tempi
the
era una
15th
bomba.
anniversary
Era
arcade
una
stick
bomba.
for Street Fighter, and it came out when they released
Uno
Third
dei primi
Strike
casi di
and
Tournament
Super
Edition
Turbo.
fu
Yeah,
ancora
the
prima di Mad
anniversary
Cats.
collection.
Yeah,
Allora non
those
mi
two
ricordo,
put
non
together,
so
we
di
talked about
che anno è
that a few
datato
times.
quello stick.
That's really incredible when you think about it. They released that just for that little, not even like a collection, just 2 games.
Yeah.
Like, but it was the 15th anniversary, so I guess that's why.
And they were relatively big deals because at the time in the US, I don't think, well, Third Strike never actually had an arcade perfect port yet because the Dreamcast version was balls.
Yeah, it was balls.
Sì, vabbè.
La
La versione Dreamcast di 3DS faceva proprio schifo.
at home either outside of
Cioè-
a collection on PS1. So this fulfilled a lot of, like, I played Evo, my first 2 Evos on that stick because there was just very few options arcade stick wise in the US market. You had to, I remember ordering from freaking Lixang.
Perché ricordi, vabbè, sì,
An
infatti.
A-Trap, a Hori
Max,
Real Arcade
madò.
Pro, the old orange one with
La
like
serie
the
Ori
green
Real
base.
Arcade
Justin
Pro.
knows probably exactly what I'm
Questa
talking
fu una
about,
serie
'cause it was
che
super popular,
rivoluzionò-
and I hated it. I was used to
proprio
this weird shit,
ebbe parecchie
you know,
rivoluzioni.
this,
Cioè,
like grinding
c'è un po' di
for-
rivoluzione, cazzo.
like shoryukens and motions, and so this was like the first time people in the US widely, I'd say, on at least modern systems was able to actually get something, because this was on Xbox as well as PlayStation 2.
I think you're right, because it's the first one I remember seeing, like, even like advertisements for, like, comic books or at least like game magazines. The problem with that one is that it's so not
Tra
that it's
l'altro il primo e il
massively
secondo
heavy, but
Ori
it's so
Rap
thick.
sono
Like it's
rarissimi da
vertically
trovare.
Yeah, it's
thick.
very
Like
thick.
why is like
this is
I,
my
Anzi, la serie
I
Ori
am-
Rap in
Look how big
generale.
this is.
Fino al terzo sono rarissimi. Il
American.
4, vabbè, il quarto si trova, il quarto e il quinto si
I enjoy
trovano.
my women like that, but I don't enjoy the arcade because it puts a lot of pressure on your legs when
Yes.
your hand your forearms are down on it. And I remember using this stick and like, oh my god, this is killing my legs. And
Also-
whenever I never had a stable table that was like at the right elevation where I can put it on and just play there. Also,
Che poi vabbè, sull'utilizzo dell'arcade stick, ma ormai ad oggi, per come sono realizzati quelli di oggi, siamo tutti abituati che si tengono sulle gambe. Però c'è chi comunque preferisce la tecnica ancora del metterlo su un supporto. Anche ai tornei, si può fare, non è una cosa che non è consigliata. Anzi, c'è chi preferisce metterlo su un supporto e giocare direttamente, perché magari a usarlo sulle gambe non si trova.
Those are not
Also,
mashable
io grazie a Dio
buttons.
These are
problemi di
not
questo tipo mai
mashable
avuti.
buttons. Like
That
you
will
see,
hurt your-
do
they
you
will
see
hurt your
how
hand.
high these rise off of the stick right here? They're huge. So these
yeah.
buttons are like half an inch, including the housing as well as the button itself. They have like thickness to them. So I can I'm like actually hurting
No.
myself doing this.
Yeah.
This is not a Marvel stick,
Uno stick
right?
proprio vecchia
but
scuola.
you see how that's red, white, and blue? That's how American it is.
Wow! I didn't even
Bro.
put that together. These aren't adjusted. This is original too. Yeah.
No,
Wow.
it's crazy because that's like what Capcom arcades used to do. Those colors are red, white, and blue. Were like literally all over the arcades in Chinatown Fair. Like I don't think that was a coincidence. I think they did it on purpose.
They did it on purpose, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then, but speaking about like those sticks, right? So you had those sticks, you had the Moss sticks, and then you have like rare Japanese Hori sticks. This is when Hori was like the popular forefront of Japanese like arcades and like arcade
Yeah.
joysticks to buy and stuff like that.
Man.
And when you went to tournaments, bro, I didn't have a stick for like at least 5 years competing in the FGC. So I would just
You'd borrow.
a stick.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, can I borrow that for a second? And then so that's what people did back in the day. Now people don't borrow anything anymore. But like, but back in the day, if you couldn't get your joystick or anything like that, you always had to ask, hey, can I borrow that for this next match?
And in the offhand, you ran into somebody that read that like 10-page thread on SRK about building your own stick. People
Yeah.
actually managed to put together their own sticks and stuff and like literally homebrew the hell out of like a piece of wood and like figure and like there's some very pretty sticks, like some very good craftsmanship that I remember around the time frame for people that were really serious into it, you know? But
And like your apartment stinks like soldering
sawdust.
iron.
So-
yeah, and that's not my first stick though. This is the first one that became wildly popular. Justin, what was the first stick you actually bought? Can you remember?
Yeah, the Dreamcast Green Goblin.
Oh,
Easy.
same,
Wow.
same.
Yeah, easy. I remember seeing it because that's when like the Dreamcast first came out, and I had the stupid UFO controller. It was trash, and I'm like, how can I play
Sì,
fighting games on it if there's no joystick?
effettivamente.
And then
Yeah.
I'm
Perché
at a-
mamma mia,
like
il
a
pad
Chinese game
Dreamcast
store,
era
and
veramente
then I
uno
just see it on
schifo.
the shelf, and I was like,
C'era uno
this is for
schifo
Dreamcast? And
totale.
like, yeah, and I was like, $60.
È bello
I was
c'è
like,
chi li
oh,
utilizza,
yeah,
it's not
a
bad.
giocare.
yeah, I'll
Cazzo,
take it, right?
tornei.
So then I bought that,
visto un po'
and
di tornei
obviously
Marvel
it
2 dove la
served its
gente
purpose.
usava.
It's obviously very flimsy. You
Yeah.
can easily
Contenti loro.
just throw it
Dicevo,
around like
pensavo
just like
contenti
it's
loro,
so
contenti
light.
loro.
There's no weight to it, so it's really hard to play on. But it did serve its purpose when practicing on the Dreamcast.
Yeah, I still have my my first Green Goblin. It's literally missing the bottom plate because the buttons always like the literal like cherry
Non
switches on the
coincidenti.
buttons and stuff just came undone, so I had to reattach them all the time because I used it too much. But that was absolutely my first stick as well. It was made by Agitech. I think Agitech was the ones
Agitech.
that
You know-
initially put it out, and I was the only person at my electronics boutique that pre-ordered an arcade stick. So they only got like 3 in at the store. So they were pretty hard to find over time.
That's crazy you say that because like I was just saying when you were like looking through your stick, I was like, yeah, I bought this Green Goblin stick and I don't even know what brand it is because there's no like visible logo on the Green
No.
Goblin.
It's Green Goblin. That's the name of the
Green
company.
Goblin.
It is for some reason, it's the official Sega Dreamcast arcade stick. It's the exact same arcade stick over in Japan. But for some reason, the Japanese market just didn't figure that there was enough people that were going to buy it in the U.S. because that's just the way the industry was. Like, oh, there's no arcade
Yeah.
stick market here. So Agitech saw an opportunity because like Marvel versus Capcom and several Capcom games were on the system. Hey, people would probably want an arcade stick. Because I don't know if you guys all remember the quality of arcade sticks around that time frame for like the PS1 or the N64 or those funky ass. We got to get some picture of some funky old Mad Catz arcade stick.
I have never seen an N64 arcade stick.
There better be one.
I have never seen that, and I never had a PS1 joystick. So when I was playing like all the Capcom games, I was playing on the PS1 controller.
Mamma.
So my first joystick of all time was the Dreamcast, and the second one would be a PS2.
I want to find, because I have vivid memories of in my store this thing that was like bright purple. And it's almost impossible to like Google it now because all of Google has been festered by modern arcade stick bullshit. So I can't like, it was made by some company, but I think you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. It wasn't even that big stupid fat buttons. It felt like if you move the lever, the whole stick went with it. That was the quality of the arcade stick market at the time frame outside of this other stuff.
Oh, I just dropped it into the chat. Look at this shit.
That's not real,
Madonna
bro.
mia ragazzi, che merda! Questo era l'arcade stick del Nintendo 64. Merda fumante. A parte che i picchiaduro che giravano su Nintendo 64, tralasciando Killer Instinct Gold e Super Smash Bros, erano di un'ingiocabilità assurda per via del pessimo controller. L'unica caratteristica degna di nota di sto controller era il fatto che praticamente la leva fosse staccabile e potevi spostarla. Infatti se la mettevi là al centro era come se stessi usando l'analogico, invece a sinistra come se fosse il B-pad. Mamma mia, merda fumante.
Yeah, it's age tech.
Agitech, and what was it? There was also
And no, Interact.
Interact, yeah, arcade.
The
stick.
arcade shark.
Interact, yeah.
That looks like that looks like a console. It looks like it don't even look like it looked like a full-on console. Like you put a cartridge in the back and everything. Oh my
Dude,
god.
Ad oggi è un pezzo da collezione rarissimo. Infatti se io ce l'avessi, lo prenderei solo per tenerlo esposto di ce l'ho. Ma per il resto, raga, non mi basterebbe nemmeno per l'articolo del cervello di usarlo. Manco se avessi il Nintendo 64.
Yo, you think this stick would be good? And I'm like, buddy, I do not
You're
think
like,
so.
yes.
But apparently, yeah, he cut his teeth on that stick and learned how to play Marvel 2 at a super high level. Like,
It looks like he literally did cut his teeth on that back top, man. He like chewed that up.
That looks tough right there.
That's nasty, man. That's like that. That belong like that looks like one of those things they show at the Nintendo World Store. Like this thing survived World War.
yeah.
You know, whatever. Whoa! Look
Yeah.
at that. You can get so many girls.
That was
If you had
Like the silver one?
Yeah, the chrome stick.
the old Dreamcast alloy arcade stick. So these, once again, these things like weren't official, but in the U.S. they're like, oh, there's a market for this, right? And then the Green Goblins eventually sell out. They're like, oh, so all the other stick makers, quote unquote, jump into the waters and try to provide around this time frame. So the funny thing is, for the majority of people that weren't like arcade goers, which was around the late 90s, unfortunately a very small percentage, the market was kind of dying.
Yeah.
People were playing on controller, and that was the same
Yeah.
thing for me. I didn't learn how to play on an arcade stick until Marvel vs. Capcom 1. That was the game that did it for me.
Well, because I think there was like this kind of what do I want to say, like separation of like, you know, console manufacturers
Poi io
and
ricordo,
like
vabbè, ho
any
iniziato
publishers
veramente ad
that
amare
had like
l'arcade
arcade
stick
arms.
dopo
Were
che ho
like,
iniziato a
let's
giocare
keep these things
i
separate
classici
because
picchiaduro per
you know eventually as the
PS1
90s
perché
wore on, the consoles just
o
bit.
almeno fino a quando non presi il mio primo arcade stick che fu l'Orimini, io gli unici casi di picchiaduro che avevo giocato su PS1 erano stati Tekken 3 e gli Street Fighter Alpha. Mi si aprì un mondo dopo dopo che presi. Infatti scoprì Marvel vs Capcom, scoprì Soul Blade, scoprì King of Fighters. Oh, raga, dire che non ho più smesso di usarlo è dire poco. Infatti, raga, se ne ho così tanti oggi ce n'è una ragione.
Super hard into the arcades.
Cioè,
So if you
soprattutto
want, like, you
ricordavo
can get these specialty
giocare Marvel
controllers,
vs
but
Capcom,
no
era
one made
fighissimo.
like there's the NES Advantage, I
quel
guess,
cazzo,
their
guarda.
little arcade stick for the NES. But
Yeah.
beyond that, it's like I never saw anyone ever have a Genesis arcade stick. Not to say that it doesn't exist. And this N64 one we just found by accident. I've never seen that.
Nel
Like,
Advantage era
I've seen it. It
buono.
wasn't my
Ma
store.
c'era anche lo stick del Mega
well, I
Drive.
mean, no one in my neck
Quello
of
per
the
il Mega
woods,
Drive
but,
era terribile perché era
there
solo
were
a tre
always like those
tasti.
exotic specialty controllers that
mia.
were never going
saputo
to be
io il
a
pad
standard
normale.
ever until a certain game or
Se ne
someone
trovano,
started
si,
pushing things.
se,
and
se girate
Street,
si
like,
usate
literally,
come
it
Vinted
could
uguale,
only
poi
really
ne
be
trovate,
Street
ne trovate a
Fighter's big
pacchi.
return, where Capcom's you got to monetize the fuck out of this.
Yeah.
Like, who
Cazzarola.
wants to? And they probably saw a good return on the 15th anniversary stick.
I think they
I
did.
imagine,
Yeah.
yeah, right. That makes sense. Like, and we've talked about Mortal Kombat 9's arcade stick.
E questo praticamente,
yeah.
questo
That's
raga per
the
chi non lo
cross
conoscesse,
thing, right?
aspetta, stop. Un attimino, torno indietro.
Right, that makes sense. Like, and we've talked about Mortal Kombat.
Questo per dire uscì con l'arrivo di Mortal Kombat 9 sul mercato. Il famoso reboot uscito su PlayStation 3 e Xbox 360 e fu l'unico. È l'unico arcade stick pensato. Fu proprio uno stick pensato per i giocatori di Mortal Kombat, dato che Mortal Kombat aveva un layout particolare. E la cosa bella è che questo stick non utilizzava tasti Sanwa come quelli che diciamo si erano diffusi all'epoca, come quelli della Oreo o della Mad Catz. No, usava proprio tasti e leva tradizionali, quelli che si trovavano una volta sui cabinati. Ma anche per dire nei cabinati, ma per dire anche quando in Giappone vennero diffusi i cabinati di Mortal Kombat, sempre quelli originali, sì, sempre questi tipi di tasti non avevano i tasti Sanwa, cioè proprio una scelta, diciamo, di non snaturare il gioco. Infatti, chi gioca a Mortal Kombat, vabbè, c'è da dire che chi gioca in Mortal Kombat attuali dice è molto meglio giocare con il pad piuttosto che con lo stick. Si trova anche la configurazione per giocare con lo stick, raga, non vi pensate, però chiaramente non è così facile, ecco, non è così facile.
9's arcade
PDP.
stick.
Oh my
yeah,
god, that's
yeah.
the cross thing, right? The old school MK.
It was big. It's bigger than your anniversary thing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was massive. By the way, up here to my left
E
or
tra
right,
l'altro questo
whatever
è
is
stato
in the
anche
final
forse
video,
il
Justin,
primo
the
stick
Mortal
ad avere
Kombat
che aveva il
9
cavo
PvP
staccabile.
champion.
Aveva il
I
cavo
remember
staccabile.
that
Questo
tournament.
veniva dato
Oh my
con la
God,
Collector
that was crazy
Edition.
just because of, like,
Che all'interno
the
c'era il
rules
gioco.
was, this is a national
Infatti era
tournament,
stato
but
anche
you
il primo
have
che
to
era
use the PvP
apribile.
joystick.
Did you have to
Right.
use it?
Caratteristica
Yeah,
poi
you
ripresa
had
in
to
seguito
use
da
it.
Mad
Everyone
Catz
had
per
to
il
use
TIE
the
2
joystick. That's the only
e da
way
Razer per
for you
il
to
suo
compete in a
Pantera.
tournament is that you
E anche
use
per
their
l'Atrox.
joystick.
Quello sia
You
per
can't
il
use a
Pantera che per
pad
l'Atrox.
and everything like that. So everyone that was like really good NRS players on pad, like Perfect Legend, he was forced to use on the joystick. So it was kind of weird because they called it the national tournament, right? National championship, but that there's a clause you have to use our
Asterisk.
joystick. Yeah. So it's kind of insane for that most part right there.
So that's the time frame that everything starts to change, right? There's clearly a moment here back on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox where suddenly Street Fighter games are actually playable online. And it's like,
I
oh
think-
man, CVS 2 and Third Strike is online, so they release a stick for it, and it works out pretty well. So there's like a big change in the stick market around 2008, 2009, because Markman, stick aficionado, is working directly with Mad Catz to sort of change
sì.
Mad Catz to not being this really shitty peripheral company.
Yeah.
Like, let's just be honest. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we got a 4-player Smash game. There's 3 players, and 1 person gets the Mad Catz controller, and you're gonna have to coin toss for the Mad Catz controller. And that's the way Mad Catz was for a long time. But Mark wanted to change that. He wanted to get official Japanese parts, the stuff that was present in like Astro City, which was like the big Sega arcade cabs and stuff like that around the time frame. So it was like, oh, we're gonna get proper, a nice Japanese stick outside of the Hori H-Wrap that you had to import. And that was great. Dude, those sticks were so hard to come by on the Street Fighter 4 era, the launch, that it was ridiculous. Like, if you were actually even able to find a fight stick.
Even the pads, even the Street Fighter 4 Mad Catz pads were like not the easiest thing to find, especially if there was a certain character's like color. It was what, Guile, Chun-Li, Blanca, Ken, I want to
sì.
say.
Che poi di sti cazzo di controller, raga, gli unici che erano buoni erano quelli cablati, perché esistevano 2 versioni di questi tipi di pad. Quelli cablati e quelli wireless, ma quelli wireless facevano uno schifo. Infatti, ragazzi, se magari volete trovarne uno sull'usato da prendere a poco, raga. Assicuratevi che sia cablato e non sia con di quelli
I never
wireless.
saw
I
Ken
remember that.
once. I had to
I'm getting
settle for
those-
Blanca.
Più per una
I
questione
think
di
I'm getting
input
those
lag che
controllers
altro.
mixed up with the also ones that came out with the 15th anniversary that had like holographic horseshit.
Ah, è vero,
in the
perché
middle.
That's
realizzò
Chun-Li,
anche
that's
una linea per la
Chun-Li, for sure. I
PlayStation
remember
2.
Chun-Li
Realizzò
was one that
Like
per i 15
Chun
anni.
and Ken
Capcom
and
realizzò,
Akuma.
fece realizzare
Yeah,
That was,
per i
that was
15
an
anni.
Udon special. 'cause
Come
that was all
alternativa
Udon
all'arcade
art was
stick
the Street
fatto
Fighter 4
appositamente.
pads.
Aspettatemi un attimo, raga, devo spegnere il ventilatore. Spegnere il ventilatore. Benissimo, andiamo. Ok, eccomi ragazzi.
Were like the official art of that character with like the
Gotcha.
ink brush stuff, and like even those were like super rare. Like I remember I had to wait a long time and kept calling stores like I really want a pad because I knew I wasn't going to get a stick.
Yeah.
Because that was even rarer.
And even at the time frame, this wasn't, and we have to like sort of establish here, getting sticks was never cheap. Even the fight stick, the tournament edition, like premium fight stick, was $149.99 in 2009, US dollars. So that's approximately like $5,000 nowadays. So it was not a cheap adventure. Like if you were gonna get into Street Fighter 4 and you wanted to get
Considera
a
che adesso
stick, which
invece
was now the
i Tournament
premium
Edition
way
te
to
li
play the
tirano
game,
dietro.
it was gonna set you back like nearly $250.
Yeah.
If you get the collector's edition, especially. But
Yeah.
go ahead, Justin.
No, I was like, I thought it was just so crazy how it was so
Cioè, no, non sto
like
scherzando,
wanted,
ragazzi,
like
guardate
everybody
veramente
wanted,
siti
even like
usati, ne
people
trovate a bizzeffe
outside
di
of the fighting
Tournament
game
Edition.
community was
Yes.
like, I need
Yeah.
this joystick, I need this joystick. I'm like, what is this? Is this like a sneaker sale or
The-
something? Like
the
everything got
mentality.
sold out.
Buy it.
The mentality was changing around this time frame. This is the moment where before, if you were using controllers, right? Before, if you were using arcade sticks or whatnot, like haphazard made at home or H-Raps or whatever, you had some options, right? But a lot of games, even around the late 2000s, were cool with you playing controller. Most games were designed around you playing with controller, even around that time frame, because obviously the market was changing. But for some reason, and I think it boils down to the price, people become stick snobs around 2008, 2009. And I was one of them, right? Of course you're one of them. And I could sort of boil down like, okay, let's sort of like get to the fiber of this. What the hell was the reason behind it? And I really think it's the fact that it was expensive. People needed a reason to validate a $150 controller purchase in 2009 and be like, oh yeah, I spent a shit ton of money on this arcade stick. It's clearly going to make me better. It clearly makes me better than you. like that kind of like, shitty mentality that everyone has at some point, that it's like, oh, I need to validate this purchase in some way. And I think that's where the first really beginning of stick snobbery
I think
starts
that
to
makes
happen.
sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense just because like eventually, like when you become like a stick snob, you start to become a stick collector, because that's when Mad Catz also started to be like, hey, we got this Comic-Con edition with the Sagat
Yeah.
one, right, and then the Chun-Li one, and then like the Hello Kitty one, and then the purple one.
Sì,
with all the
vabbè,
secret
infatti,
Femme
cioè,
Fatale.
quante
Like,
edizioni hanno
and
fatto,
then the Marvel's
mamma
Capcom
mia.
2 one came out. It's like, damn, they're just trying to
They're shoes.
really, yeah, they're literally like became a collector's item where like I mean, I'm pretty sure you have a bunch of sticks somewhere, but I have a crap ton of sticks literally in the house, like
I have
in
a
my storage
stick
shed.
wall.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, inside baseball, Max has a stick wall with individual lights
Yes.
pointed at his favorite sticks. It's
Actually,
awesome.
I'm not even lying. When we first built this room, my wife had a vision, and we hired someone to make like built-in cabinetry for the walls for like games. And he's like, "Can we
Nice.
make a wall for arcade sticks?" And yes, it's just you just stick them in, and there's a little light for every single one, and it goes down, and it's very pretty. I want to find my first stick. It's over here somewhere. I'm gonna go have the. I need like 2 minutes to find my very first arcade stick, as I still actually have it. And it's hilariously embarrassing what's all over it and on it, but hopefully I'll find it before the show's over.
Well,
So you got like, so you put like stickers and stuff like on it.
Oh yeah.
a bit earlier, I grabbed like a pad. I know it's not specifically a stick, but I grabbed. I'm not sure if you guys will be
Oh,
able
those
to
are the
see it.
Ah,
modern-
il
These
Razer
are- This is the
Ryan.
Razer Fight Pad
Yeah.
for PS4, and I'm not a big fan of like how
Oh.
like geometrical it is, and the shoulder's not great. but this is a great D-pad.
Costa
like,
quanto
Yeah.
costa li mortacci su ma
Vedi,
Razer fa dei
Oh,
prodotti
that's
di
very,
qualità.
very
mechanical
clicky.
D-pad.
Yeah. So like, when I see, I've asked once or twice, like people like, hey, is there any like, pads? Because in my specific space here, like there's just not a place to put a stick if I want to like go ham on a particular fighting game.
Yeah.
Sorry. The cat is like running around all of my cables and shit. Like we're talking about sticks. So I'm very interested in like what modern pads can do nowadays, and I'm not sure if there's any like other recommendations or if you guys have heard or seen anything, or
Yeah.
are we all stick and are we like moved on to the hitboxes now? Like, is there no going back?
And that's a good point. That would be funny to hear Justin's side of it as well, because I'm not entirely stick when it comes to like every single fighting game. I think a lot
yeah.
of them I can interchange between stick and pad, even on like some Soul Calibers and maybe some older Tekken games, just because that's how I played them. But
KI I can.
with
but
Killer Instinct,
yeah.
yeah, KI maybe SNES,
Yeah.
definitely for sure. But no, I'm like almost strictly with almost every NRS game, maybe outside of Injustice, a pad player. I
Yeah,
play
so-
all Mortal Kombat games on pad.
So
Wow.
for me, I play stick for all the Capcom games and all the anime games. But for Killer Instinct, 2013 and MKX and MK9, I was a pad player. So like the year at Evo when I was in top 8, I was using the Xbox One pad for that whole tournament right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there's a lot of fighting games that is just pad friendly, which is very good. Like obviously it comes down to kind of like modern control scheme and how games are being developed now, where
Yeah.
it's just easier for input buffers, right? Because when I was playing the old school fighting games, let's say on Dreamcast, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or like Third Strike, if I'm playing on pad, I have to hold the pad like this, right, with the
Crab
two
claw.
fingers, yeah, right. But then now for modern
Anche
fighting,
da
like
chi
Killer
gioca a
Instinct, I was
Tekken
using
viene
my
molto
thumb. I
usata
didn't
la...
need to do that.
Per chi gioca da
So
pad
for Killer
viene usata la
Instinct, I
tecnica
could just
dell'usare
play
due
like
dita.
how
Ma
you naturally
perché
would
se
hold
no,
the
raga, non
controller.
riesci a fare un cazzo.
Same thing for MKX. So
Non
I
puoi
would
fare
say
tutto col
now
pollice.
pads are just been more convenient. A lot of players, even for Street Fighter 5 in Europe, all the best players are all pad players. And like even Luffy, who's one of the best players in France, he won Evo for Street Fighter 4 on a PS1 pad.
Fucking legend.
That was one of the first times where it's like, what did he win the Evo on? Like that was one of the moments where it was like weird controllers
dimentica quel
that
momento.
had big success.
But like it was almost like news whenever there was like a major, or not even a major, but like at least a well-known tournament someone won not on a stick, just like a pad. Like I remember there was like a time, like I don't know, I want to say 2012, 2013, around that time. You'd see like a front page Event Hubs thing like crazy man wins on pad.
Yes.
Which is always incredible.
It was alien for a long time because it was like, how do you even play Street Fighter not on, an arcade
joystick,
stick?
yeah.
Like it
Sì,
felt
perché Street
at that
Fighter
time, the
pensavo
stick snobbery
semplicemente
was
era stato
so
pensato per
intense that it felt
l'arcade,
like
era
an
stato pensato,
impossibility
quindi
to do well
vedere un
otherwise.
player che vince
So
con un pad,
and it's
vince il
funny
torneo con un
because
pad,
a lot of the
cazzo.
best Street Fighter 4
Ai tempi
players
era
are doing
una
that as
cosa
ridiculous
anacronistica,
execution. And these
cazzo.
dudes on pad,
Se pensiamo
right,
alla
you
questione
can't
appunto di
even
Luffy,
blink. You
che
can't even
vinse
like
con il
double
pad
tap.
della
You can't even
PS1,
actually
l'Evo
do the shortcuts that it takes to do the
2012,
hard combos.
mi sembra.
They're fine, right? They just figured out the timing when it came to using
2012,
pads, and some of the
2013, mi
best
sembra.
players are actually pad players from Street Fighter
Mamma
4.
mia.
Yep, I think that also the crazy part about like the fact that we already acknowledge that modern fighting games and anything Street Fighter 4 in future, like this is where joystick was like kind of declining and more people were rising up as pads and hitboxes. Even
Rise
older
up.
games, right? Yeah, even older games recently, like in Mario Capcom 2, if you know a player named General Thriller, he won a major with a pad with Iron Man War Machine Cable and beating everybody that
sì.
uses sticks, where Mario Capcom 2 was heavily always said stick is the best way
Penso
to play
si
Mario
Justin.
Capcom 2.
stia
Justin,
riferendo
do
al
we wanna
Texas
talk
Showdown
about
che c'è
Fnatic?
stato quest'anno.
Oh, the
Mamma mia.
one button dash.
One button dash.
Un mega torneo è stato.
I mean, the one button dash was kind of interesting because like now when you're playing on console, you have the option to like button map, right?
Yeah.
And this is where kind of like a lot of pad players has like I guess not taken advantage, but kind of leveled the playing field by using button macros and button mapping. So Fnatic was playing Mars Capcom 2. He's a stick player in arcade, actually. He plays
Yes.
on stick, but for some reason on consoles he decides to play on pad with a PS1 pad, but he button maps one of his buttons as a one button dash with light punch and heavy punch, but
this
he
is-
loses an assist.
To let everybody, this is Marvel versus Capcom 2.
Yeah.
On in the mid 2000s, using, I believe he was using just a converter, right? Just
Yeah,
one of those
converter.
old school
Oh God.
like Pelican converters or some shit. And to making his PS1 controller work on his Dreamcast, and because they had like extra buttons in the back, right? It allowed some spots to be macroed, and yeah, he macroed in a one button dash, and it was apparently legal at Evo, but caused a big, similar to the hubbub that we're running into right now, right? He was known as like the one button dash guy, and because
Yeah,
that's execution.
Yeah, the crazy part about that, so there was a downside of it with his strategy, right? His downside of his strategy is that Dreamcast only allows you can map 6 buttons total. So because of that, he had the one button dash, but he had to lose something in return. So he lost
Equivalent
Assist
exchange.
two?
yeah, no, he lost assist 1.
Okay.
Yeah, so he lost assist 1. So that means he only had 1 assist. So if he plays MSP, so when he DHCs Magneto and Storm, he loses Psyblade completely. Right? So it's kind of a
That's
double-edged
scary.
sword. Yeah. So he's pretty much banking on Magneto having to win from the start.
Okay, that's right. I think I was thinking of another story too. That's why they think they dubbed it being fine, because
Yeah.
he's putting himself at a disadvantage technically
Right.
by using this. Like, okay, yeah, literally equivalent exchange bullshit.
Just like I'm gonna put a buff on myself, but don't worry, there's also a debuff. Like it
My
all
hands are
works
duct
out.
taped together.
Yeah, but the crazy part is, like, if let's say if you're playing these older games now, as pad and you're playing on Fightcade, it's very effective because Fightcade allows multiple macros.
Yeah.
So when you're
True.
playing people in like Mars Capcom 1 or any versus games,
buddy.
bro, they're moving like I'm like, how do you move this fast? Like I can't even move that
And
fast.
MVC1 is the best example of, like,
Yes.
the game is dramatically different if you have access to something of a remap, because MVC1 is, once again, old school arcade game, a 6-button fighter. There is no assist in MVC1 that is bound to button. There's just 2 mediums for assist. But if you want to dash in Marvel 1, it's either forward, forward, back, back, or all 3 attacks at the same time. And if
Yep.
you want the dash to happen with all 3 of your attacks, you have to press them on the same input buffer at the
Yep.
exact same time. And that shit ain't easy, bro. Like, you're going to get just like heavy out of nowhere because you just barely messed up the timing. So there's obviously like movement that you can do in the game. There's wave dashing and stuff that's super good. You can do all 3 attacks down, all 3 attacks down, all 3 attacks down to wave dash in Marvel 1 to make your character significantly effing faster, and also dash cancel out of shit.
Yep.
So you play people on Fightcade or something that it's painfully clear that, oh, this guy has a macro on this. And even I've used it sometimes. I'm like, this game is so crazy now, dude. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's actually pretty insane. But then you pretty much, like, stuff like that. It pretty much helps the execution barrier, but you get to see some cool stuff that you have never probably
Never
ever
seen.
seen before, like back in the day, right?
Yeah, it's true, because it was just so hard. Like, and you would think it would be easy, right? That just, smacking 2 attack buttons at the same time, or smacking 3 attack buttons at the same time. But the way the old games caught your inputs, pretty much meant to be, they all had to hit on the exact same frame. And if they
Yep.
don't hit on the exact same frame, it just doesn't register. So if you see people schmoving around in MVC1 in arcades or something like that, no, that shit is crazy hard. You see people with like crazy schmovement in X-Men versus Street Fighter, that shit is crazy hard.
One nice thing I was just thinking about is that, like, back in the day and throughout the 2000s, it's like pad, then like a bit of arcade stick throw in, and then it's like arcade sticks and stuff around that area, and then like specialized pads. And now it's like, just with the kind of like information being put out there about how to like construct these things, like just accessibility in general, like for fighting games, like people can make their own thing. Them, like, someone might have like some sort of disability with their hands, and someone can make that for you to accommodate, because that information is out there. And just in the 90s, it's like, if you can't like
This way or the highway.
deal exactly. So I always think it's like interesting when those stories come out of like, you know, here's this crazy pad that like takes into account this person's particular, they love fighting games, but now they can actually play them at like, you know, whatever level that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's so many more options nowadays, and I like how it's not that two-tiered system. It's either you're walking in with your arcade stick or you're walking with your pad, then someone's ringing a bell, then they're going, shame,
Yeah.
shame for the pad.
Game of Thrones.
I got snobbery thrown at me. I remember I was bringing my Street Fighter 4 pad to something. Someone's like, oh, really? I'm like, yes. Yes, it's the one I can afford. And Max has totally hit the nail on the head where it's someone
Sì,
going
ma
like,
comunque
I
c'è da
can
dire i
afford
picchiaduri hanno
the
avuto
tournament
un'evoluzione
edition. I'm
incredibile,
like,
hanno avuto
that's
perché
great.
ai tempi di
Super
Street
happy
Fighter
for you,
4
dude.
You have to validate your purchase
la
in
maggior
some
parte
way
dei
and throw
picchiaduri
someone else under the bus at the
pensati
same
per essere
time. It's
giocati
just
così tutti
very
con lo stick.
efficient.
I
Invece
think
ad
it's also
oggi
like a
c'è le
psychological
periferiche
advantage
sono
they
talmente
think,
evolute
they
che
assume, like,
che ormai
oh, pro,
non
you're
solo
a
le periferiche ma
professional.
anche i
you might as well
giochi
take out the
sono
fucking
talmente
power
evoluti
glove and be
che tu
like,
puoi giocare
yeah,
persino
Matt, you're not that far
Same
off.
con
You're really
It
not that
is,
il
far
because
off.
Wiimote puoi
it's an
giocare, puoi arrivare a
intimidation
giocare,
scene,
cacchio,
really.
con il pad del
The
NES puoi
movie
arrivare
The
a
Wizard
giocarci.
is like a
Giusto per
deconstruction of the fighting
intenderci.
game like scene,
Yeah.
really, when you think about it.
And so we can start to talk about like the semantics, but more the science behind it. Like, what is actually better? Is it pad or stick? And really, there's no direct advantage of one over the other nowadays, especially. So if you're playing on a pad, right? Let's just talk about like the motion part of it, like the D-pad. So the amount of space in between the D-pad and actually connecting input to input is just geographically smaller, right?
Yeah.
If you want to go from a forward to a down or a down to a forward or a back to a forward, there's just less space in between there than a stick of going back to forward just in general. So technically, like, that has an advantage, right? You actually getting to the motions quicker and performing the motions quicker can almost happen faster on pad for people that are like expert pad players. But on stick, it's like it's different. It's just a complete different motion. Sometimes there's a different rolling motion. You might not have as many shortcuts, or you might have access to more shortcuts. But if there's one thing that's painfully clear, yes, the layout of a stick, the buttons, does have technically a smaller advantage because your hand just rests there. You don't have to rely on the shoulder buttons and all that shit. So that's the way my brain works. It's like, okay, yeah, sticks on the button end work a bit better. But on the pad end, it's technically in pad's favor.
I 100% agree, at least like in my experience, because when I got my T for KI 2013, like that's exactly what I felt. Like the way the buttons are put on a stick, like, works really well for KI. It works well for lots of games, but like the stick portion, I'm always like, I can do it, I can work with it, but I think that you kind of really sort of nailed down why the D-pad versus the, well, not like a Super Nintendo D-pad. I would not. I'd prefer not to go back to that. I think like the controller I held up before, like, that's a really good D-pad. So it's like, if I had the time or the inclination, I would have someone build that for me, or like, you know, make it myself. Or I'm like, I want a Frankenstein controller of all the things I like. I want to make the Homer car.
It exists.
But
Yeah, so that exists.
wait, what?
They have a joystick where you have like a joystick. The buttons is where you want, and then the pad, like the joystick part, is a pad.
Okay.
So they have that
Pagine
just
sono
for you.
I'm about to
l'esempio
link you
lampante alla stranezza.
Yeah.
I'm about to link you an
Mamma
image
mia,
of a
tipo, ad esempio,
Smashbox, and
la
this is
motosega di
literally
Resident
the
Evil
Homer
4.
Simpson car of arcade sticks.
Lo Smashbox.
Yes.
Lo Smashbox. Allora, per chi non lo conoscesse questo stick, praticamente si tratta di un hitbox modificato, pensato per i giocatori di Super Smash Bros. Pensato, Madonna santa. È una roba allucinante. Mamma mia.
I've seen this before.
Però è comunque molto pratico. Però è molto pratico, però
The
devo dire,
Smashbox.
pochi sono i player che lo
So the
utilizzano.
Smashbox is crazy.
Molti
Before we move on, but,
preferiscono
like,
di gran
when you
lunga
were
il pad
talking about how, like, the
GameCube.
pad advantages versus the stick
Preferisco.
advantages.
Yeah.
So for me, I hear this from a lot of players, is that pads get worn out, so they have to
Yeah.
throw away pads, right? So they have to get a new pad. So pad players always have to get new pads, probably maybe like once every 3 months.
Because repairing
So
them is
it's-
way harder than
Anzi,
stick.
ci sono molti
Yeah,
picchiaduro che
so it
comunque
becomes
seguono
eventually
l'esempio di
very
Smash a livello di
cost-effective as
utilizzo
a
dei
pad
pad.
player.
Un esempio
But the
è
advantage of a
Rivals
pad
of
player,
Leader, che
from
ricorda
my
molto
experience,
Melee,
is
ricorda.
when you fight
Infatti vengono molto,
Snake
viene molto
Eyes, when you
utilizzato
fight a
quando
Zangief
vengono
player
fatti i tornei vengono
and
fatti
he's
su
turning that
Switch
button with his
con
thumb,
pad, molti giocano
you
con,
can't hear it.
con il
Nope.
GameCube
You can't
controller.
feel it. So
Anche lo
that's
stesso
the
Multiversus.
advantage of a pad
Cioè,
player.
Especially
all'Evo
side
di
by
quest'anno,
side, yeah,
vabbè,
yeah,
hanno fatto il
Especially
2
when
contro
you're
2, però
playing tournament,
i
like you
player,
can
vabbè,
see these
essendo
like
su
giant
PC,
motions that somebody's
hanno
doing on
giocato
stick,
con
and you know
i controlli più
you just
disparati,
can't help but
PS4,
notice it
Xbox
from your peripheral
One,
vision
il
that
game,
something is
il
about to
controller
happen.
del GameCube,
Dude,
Pad
cioè,
player,
per dare la
the pad player,
possibilità a tutti di
he's just like
giocare.
this, so you don't see any movement whatsoever. So he's good.
Dude, you're not. Yeah, I mean, you're. It's funny because me and Valle always did this to each other when we were competing in KI back at Super Arcade. But that was a huge element of side-by-side competitive gaming. Was
Yep.
especially was fake buttons and stuff like that. Acting
Oh,
like
that's
you're
the
doing
king.
something and somebody's right next to you. I'm
That's
even-
not true.
No,
Valle
that's
is
true.
incredible
Valle is
at
the
it.
king. He's
And-
the god.
and
He's the god.
Valle- He's the one that told me about it in
Porco
KI
Dio,
because
Superteam sta
the
facendo male alla
6-button
gamba.
fighting game, right? You don't need any extra buttons in KI.
Yeah.
But he would map the extra 2 buttons on the side because of the usual Mad Cat 6. So he would fake combo break all the time, and he would smack these buttons, and he would
Oh my
constantly do it. And then I
God.
started doing it, and it works. People get freaked out when you like fake, like you're gonna do something in a combo. People panic. It works, man.
Yeah, it does. It does.
But like it doesn't work nowadays because
Because
like
you're
it's
online,
an
it
old.
doesn't matter.
It's
Yeah,
an,
it
well,
doesn't
yeah,
work.
no,
yeah.
no, yeah.
But like
okay,
but in person back in the day, like so if
Legit strategy.
so if you look back at the Evo Moment 37 where I'm mashing like a maniac, that's because it was like kind of to mess up the timing.
You want to mess up his timing.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
so he can
but-
start
sì.
yourself doing because timing in third strike pairing is all like DDR shit, right?
Yep.
So you just like there's
Yeah,
much
that,
noise out there.
that was why I was mashing.
quello
And that's
Daigo
why
tranquillo,
Daigo was
pa,
smart
pa,
enough to
pa,
have
pa,
a
e
little
Justin si stava
plastic wall,
scatenando,
like a
cazzo.
cardboard
In
box
qualche modo lo devo
between
fare.
it, so he didn't notice it. That's what he
Wait,
did.
he knows how to play like multiplayer in StarCraft 64 where he takes like a divider.
Yo, that's what he did. No, if you look at it, there's a cardboard wall like a
I never
divider.
noticed.
I never
that.
saw that in the old 480p footage or whatever that Seth
Yeah.
took. I never
Yeah,
noticed
that's
that.
that because it's like to him in Japan, there's no side by side. It's head to head
head-to-head.
cabinet. So,
Yeah, that's true.
so it's like literally he's by himself. So he
And
wanted
that
to
is
recreate that moment.
That is once again relevant to today's conversation, a statistical advantage of having somebody right next to you because you're cheating. You can see what I'm doing. Like, no, I play head to head. You don't see each other. You know.
I have to say like customize your controller to have fake buttons to throw your opponent
Dude, that's-
off. That's like wrestling levels of rule bending and faking
No,
out your. I've never
it's
heard
a
of that
thing.
before.
Oh,
It's a thing.
Absolutely a definite big thing in season 1 KI competitive. I tell you what, man.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
And now we are in the era of hitbox where you're saying, I don't want to use a joystick, but I love the joystick placement of buttons, and here it is. The controller for you that you want is a hitbox.
Yeah.
That's the one right
Appena
there.
mi capita
So
l'occasione,
yeah, so
Xbox
and then
lo voglio
let's get into
prendere, raga.
what happens nowadays with the hitbox.
Lo
How does
voglio
hitboxes?
prendere.
Hitbox has always been known as the cheater box, right? It's always been like, oh, you're just gonna make this thing so much easier that the execution of it's not gonna be harder. But there is like once again push and pull. It isn't just one thing easier for everybody. It does have a big learning curve. I remember my first experience of somebody actually using a hitbox, and it wasn't a hitbox, but it was phonetically, I think that's the right word, the same thing. I was competing in Third Strike 2007, and I had my fat ass, big boy.
Anniversary.
And, like, so did half of the people there, right? And this dude shows up with this like thing that looks like he made in a high school wood shop, and it's got keys. It's got keyboard keys
Oh,
all
like,
over
okay.
it, and they're all
Yeah, he's a keyboard
individually
player.
wired and stuff. And people are like, "What the fuck, freak! Look at this freak!" People threw tomatoes at him. I'm just kidding. But it was literally the talk of the town that everyone was like, "It's a keyboard user. What the heck?" And he didn't even have the full keyboard. He just made like the WASD and like 6 buttons and a start button on the side, and he was playing like this. So that was my first introduction of like, oh, that's just a hitbox, right? really, if you just think about it, that essentially is what a hitbox really is. But the hitbox layout is a little
È
bit
vero,
different, and we're
comunque,
taking
giocare
out,
con una
you know, the
tastiera e
lever. We're
giocare
just
con un
removing
hitbox.
this aspect
Se
of
giochi con una
it.
tastiera è come se
So,
stessi usando un
the
hitbox, in
hitbox
parte.
does technically give you an advantage
Tanto che,
on a lot of
tanto che
performance
molti hanno
stuff
trovato
on the
addirittura
stick, right? When you
tecniche
go
per
leverless and you have that
determinati
big ass
giochi,
jump button and all that kind of
da
stuff,
modo che con la
there
tastiera tu
is
possa
a
emularlo
lot more
l'hitbox. Un
precision that
esempio
comes because
è
you-
Marvel 3.
you're no longer
Cioè,
doing
esiste
down
una
to forward
configurazione
and
su
rolling it,
Steam
where
per chi
what
ha il
happens if
gioco
you do that? I
acquistato
guarantee you, if you play old
che
Super
ti
Turbo or
permette di
something,
emulare
the majority of
l'hitbox
people that throw
attraverso la tastiera.
fireballs
Ci ho
throw
fatto
red
anche un
fireballs
video,
with Ryu because you're just doing the whole half
ma
circle
vi
motion
dico,
for
non
a
è
lot
il
of the
massimo
time.
come
But on a
configurazione.
hitbox, you
Non
don't.
so
You're
se è
just doing
pensata
down to
per le
forward. It's just
tastiere
bing, bing, and you're
meccaniche,
done.
perché io
So
le
you
tastiere che uso
eliminate a
sono quelle
lot
a
of those
membrana.
extra random bullshit inputs that can
Come
happen
che
where you
la
just roll from
cristiana.
back to maybe up forward and now you
Ok, la
jumped
battuta
on
l'ho fatta.
accident. Those kind of go away because the
But
jump
that's
button
like-
is
Manca nemmeno
elsewhere.
molto la fine
But that's like
del
human error at
podcast.
that
Dopo
point.
ci
If
spostiamo in
something
3S.
eliminates human error, then like, I can understand people saying that's a cheat box. But as long as there's not like frame manipulation
No,
where it's actually
nothing like that.
altering the
Yeah,
game.
no, but there are, I would say, to be the debater, there are kind of things where it's like there's a priority system where, let's say, for charge characters,
Okay.
so like hitbox is so good for charge characters. Let's say we use Guile, for example. So there's videos of people saying I could just hold back or I could hold down,
Yeah.
but if I press the second direction, that direction gets priority without me having to let go of the first button that I'm holding down, and then I could perform my Sonic Boom and Flash kick.
So what Justin's saying is absolutely true. The difference between a hitbox is that it turns the D-pad into 4 inputs. The D-pad isn't, or the stick on an arcade stick is not 4 inputs at the same time. It's only one at once, right? Only one at any given time. But if you can do back and then hold forward at the same time, what happens? If you can do back and up at the same time, what does the game prioritize? So if you're holding down and you're also holding back at the same time, are you technically still
Okay.
charging? How does the game actually register those inputs? And that's where it starts to get into some levels of like, oh, does this technically like cheating in some ways? And we have seen in the past with people modifying like hitboxes and stuff. What was the dude's name in
Full
Marvel?
Schedule.
Full Schedule in Marvel
Yeah,
3
Full
had some
Schedule.
crazy Sea Viper bullshit that I still technically don't know exactly what it was, but it was technically manipulating the input system to do more things that the character normally could because of access to new buttons.
Yeah, and then but the thing is with him, he Frankensteined it, like, because he added extra buttons where like he was able to press one button which gives him a down forward motion or down back motion, up forward. So he had all these extra buttons that made like a lot of movement thing with so much easier. You know how like in Marvel 3 you could plink dash, right? So usually when you plink dash you just kind of go like left, right. He was going down forward. So with Doctor Doom, he'll do photon rays, and then he'll go down forward like that, and he'll be with the photon rays. And naturally, you can't do that on a joystick. So that was the crazy part. That was the thing where like people were complaining about at tournaments, like, oh, this is not fair,
Gotcha.
and everything like that. And then now we're kind of back in it full circle because people are just complaining about how much it's like the execution barrier on using a hitbox makes things so much easier compared to people like if you're playing on a pad or a joystick, right? That's kind of like the whole argument now. And even Daigo was like, he switched to a hitbox. A person
yeah.
that's been playing arcade for like his whole life, he switched to hitbox during the pandemic. He also even brought a specific type of hitbox called the Gaffro box, right? And which was also Frankenstein, where to the point where
Those
they
got
had to ban.
eliminated.
Yeah, they had to ban this one. This one was where he can walk forward and literally throw a sonic boom.
Yeah.
No,
And
yeah,
that's,
okay,
That's that
yeah,
bullshit
no.
where it's like, yeah, now you can move and charge at the same time.
Yeah, he was playing. He was literally the AI at that point.
Because that's changing the properties of a character to a ludicrous degree at that point.
That's like I'm playing Guile 3DS.
Yeah,
It's just
3DS.
one button Sonic Booms and one button Flash Kicks. Hell yeah, fuck the computer.
Like easy operation mode,
Yeah.
basically.
So,
you know.
and I don't know exactly. So now we're at today, right? Justin, can you like summarize again, because we've gone through the history of custom sticks and arcade sticks and controllers and the advantages and disadvantages, and even hitbox having advantages and disadvantages. I think there's also one thing to also consider. Hitbox is alien and weird, so learning hitbox will take longer. And people ask me, hey, should I get a hitbox? And I'm like, what do you currently play with? Well, I'm good on pad. And I think playing on hitbox is going to elevate me to being better. And I'm like, I don't think this is going to be the thing that's going to do it, man.
You know, it's kind of the rumor, right? It's like how like people just think that if I play on hitbox,
Quick fix.
I will automatically become a better player, right? And I don't think that's true. I really don't think that's true. I just think it's kind of like it's the popular peripheral at the moment. Everyone wants it now. Everyone loves it. Even at my local, I would say literally 95% of people that play at the local, you are all hitbox users.
Wow.
I would say even at Evo, there were probably more hitbox users than actual joystick players and pad players. So it just ultimately in the end, you even have like other companies now making their own version of hitboxes, right? You have like the junk food micro, like the small one,
Yeah.
right? And then you have like Arcade Paradise having their own ones, and then you even have people making their own hitboxes. It's just kind of like the talk of the town. But do I think it's like, is it better? That's the real question.
Is it like
right?
community disrupting? Right?
Yeah, you know, like I just think it's like, if you're a joystick player, you're gonna just keep playing on joystick. But I feel like if you're a new player in general, like getting a hitbox won't make you a better player. It's whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Yeah.
I would say. So if you're a pad player, then you know, keep playing on pad. Or if you do want to switch, you know, that's on you. But don't expect that. Don't expect great results that this is going to make you better compared to if you're playing on pad or joystick or whatever. But I do think that the things that people can show off on hitbox is kind of crazy though. I love it. It looks so cool because then it does help like the barrier of entry for some people for certain games.
Yeah.
Especially because like, you know, like they always use Tekken as a great example of like, look, I could do Korean backdashes, I could do Electro Wing God Fist. I actually can't do Korean backdashes on the joystick, but I tried it on hitbox and like I was watching a tutorial video and it was very easy. It was really easy to do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I have to echo Justin's sentiment that I have to make this video like every 1 to 2 years when a new fighting game comes out, which is like, what should you be playing on? Should you be playing on stick or pad or whatnot, right? And I'm a stick stan. I just generally am. I learned how to play in arcades just because I loved the game in arcades and there was no way to play it at home. So when people are like coming to you and they're saying, I want to get better at fighting games, I want to learn how to play on hitbox, or I want to learn how to play on stick, because you have to assume by default they just know how to use a controller.
Yeah.
You just need to remind them that this is not going to be the thing that is going to take you from like level 5 to level 6, right? This might be the thing that like takes you from level 8 to level 9. But you're not there yet, right? The majority of people are like around this like level 2 to level 6-ish area of trying to figure out like what they are, what kind of a player they are. Are they able to learn? Are you able to figure this stuff out? And a lot of people immediately go to the controller is the problem, not me. And I'm here to tell you that's not the issue. It really is not the issue. It's more of a mental thing, and some people just don't honestly have the mental capacity to really get better and break barriers in some ways like others. And that's not a bad thing. That's just, some people just go to play fighting games and they're completely adequate at it, like they're okay, but they just don't want to get any better. And that's fine. That's actually the very, very large majority of people that even get okay at fighting games, just enjoy being this certain level and don't want to have to, you know, essentially push all the reps to get way better. So in that situation, I don't recommend changing, because you have to like change your entire mentality. You have to change all your muscle memory. Like, you're essentially starting from zero practically again and learning all over.
Like, you really have to be committed if you're going to make this jump.
Yeah.
Like, just don't think it's going to be a magic, like, power glove that's going to make you amazing at games. Like, but if you do want to take yourself up to a next level, it might be a good purchase, like, in the long term, but it's not going to magically make you a better player. You're not going to be Justin, like, you know, like in the
suddenly I'm just good at every game like Justin is, you know.
Even if you look at the history of like tournaments, right? I would say, let's say we'll just use this year as an example because hitboxes has just become way more popular this year. Kawano did win Evo with a hitbox, but
Io
other
onestamente
games
parlando, raga,
have also was
va
won
bene.
on
Allora,
joysticks and pads
raga,
as well too. So
io onestamente parlando va bene che l'hitbox sta prendendo sempre più piede, però se il futuro dei picchiaduro dovrebbe essere che, cioè, letteralmente si utilizzerà quasi esclusivamente l'hitbox e e gli arcade stick tradizionali spariranno, vi dico la verità, smetto di giocare, cioè, perché porca troia, cioè, secondo me è la cosa più brutta, cioè, questo fatto di, diciamo in un certo senso, eh, cercare di non unificare, no, non tanto unificare, ma proprio di dare solo una possibilità di scelta ai player, cioè è una cosa proprio bruttissima secondo
It's
me.
not like Hitbox is winning like every single event possible. So because of that, it's like it's kind of like literally whatever is the most suitable and comfortable for you. Like we had a guy playing on a Guitar Hero controller. He still plays on a Guitar Hero controller, and that's like his suitable controller, right? And then you have other companies that have like made their own kind of joystick. You have like the Mixbox, right, which is used
Ah,
as
il
keyboard
Mixbox.
controls.
Ecco,
You
per dire,
have
questo
an
è un
Ergo which is an
ibrido fra
ergonomic
uno
control where
stick
it's like it helps
normale
people with
e
arthritis.
l'ergo.
Yeah.
Ma
Right,
questo l'avevo
you
già
even have
visto,
Ultra
pensavo fosse un
David. He
troll.
had
Il
what's it called, the
Mixbox, per
split
dire, è
box, where the
un'alternativa
that's kind of cool
fra,
actually. I actually want one. But it's like he has
fra
the
arcade stick
controllers. It's like
tradizionale
separate.
It's like a Wii remote.
Yeah, it's like a
e,
Wii remote.
e
Yeah,
coso,
separate. So I thought so.
e
Like
tastiera.
there's
Those
controllers
potete vedere.
everywhere.
È
There's
molto
controllers for
comodo,
everyone. It just depends
almeno
on
purtroppo non l'ho
what
mai
you want
provato.
to
Tra
use.
l'altro,
So it's just kind of like
se
this
si
is
vuole
just kind of
convertire
like
per dire uno stick
talk of the
tradizionale in un
town,
Xbox è una stronzata
Hitbox is
perché c'è proprio il
the
pezzo,
best
c'è
controller in the world
proprio
right now. That's just
diciamo
literally rumors.
il,
And I would
il
say
pezzo
for
apposito
like
con
stick
tanto di
reasons,
adattatore.
right? Because arcade sticks seem to be still like the primo thing that is still available between like Victrix and nice, pretty arcade sticks, right? Because they do look aesthetically nice. I actually recommend stick because it is a lot different than hitbox and controller because it involves a lot of kinetic motion. The arcade era of games and stuff, a lot of games required a lot of kinetic motion between turning wheels or shooting guns or, you know, using this and then doing this and, you know, all this kind of bullshit. That is something that is largely gone. We've taken the motion out of like a lot of games now outside of like maybe dance games. So to me, like landing buttons and actively striking attacks on an arcade stick while also using your entire arm to do motions is something that's very like nostalgic and different. It represents an era that is kind of long gone. And that's one thing that I tell people, like, if you want to use an arcade stick, you're pretty much using it for legacy at this point, you know, because there's a lot of other options out there that are technically better, that technically might even be cheaper, but arcade sticks represent a legacy that's sort of gone now, which is the arcade era. So if you want to keep that legacy alive and also have something that like, and I think it's still the most impressive thing of all the devices to use. I think just if somebody just came in and watched people using a controller or a hitbox or an arcade stick, I think arcade stick still gets the most like, look at that. Like, you know, look at this.
That's
That
true.
person knows how to use an arcade stick? Wow. And that's actually the sentimentality now for a lot of people with like, especially I noticed with a lot of people watching Evo this year, and I got to watch it from home, of like, whoa, that person uses a stick? You know, a lot of reactions like that, where it's like, oh, arcade stick really isn't the popular option anymore that it was, you know, 10 plus
It's
years
not.
ago.
It's like it's almost taken the place of the pad.
Kinda, in a way,
Yeah.
yeah. Now it's like this experts, not even experts, but this like weird nostalgic sort of thing that people still know how to use. People still use it that way. It's like an old car, is what I'm trying to say.
It really is, because it's like it was cool at a, I don't know, it's still cool, but like it was, you know, in vogue at a point and had its time in the sun.
Yeah.
And now there's like a new kid on the block and it's leading to Twitter drama. So therefore, you know, it's the hottest shit. Therefore, people arguing about on Twitter, it's gotta be hot. So it's probably a device I'm never gonna get, because obviously I'm not like competing at any level, be it high, because I'm playing shit like Bloodstorm. You know, I don't think I'm gonna need a hitbox for that, but because I have had a few questions over the years of people saying like, you know, hey, you're into fighting games, what should I play? I'm like, maybe if you can, if this is viable, try out everything. If you know someone that has a hitbox, if you know someone that has an arcade stick,
Yeah.
or if you just want to get like a high tier pad, however much it costs, try it out and then make your decision based on that. And if you get really comfortable with that, then move on to something else if you feel like you need to make that transition. And that's like the most general advice I can give as someone that plays Bloodstorm and Beast Wars, Transmetals, and garbage Yeah, don't believe me. Believe these two guys on either of my sides here.
Yeah, I do think it's still kind of like game dependent on like
Yeah.
what's the more
Very much
preferred
so.
Ormai è finito.
controller. Like if I had to say like for Street Fighter 5, then yeah, I would say like
Sì,
hitbox
ormai,
and pad
cioè,
have
dire,
like
ormai, vabbè,
a
ormai
much
sono
more
praticamente alla fine per quel più di Telegram con le notifiche. Vabbè, devo dire è stato un bel podcast, tutto sommato. È stato un bel podcast, devo essere onesto. Non mi aspettavo una roba del genere, ecco. Allora, che dire, raga, collego l'arcade stick e ci spostiamo subito su Tekken, sì, su Tekken, su Street Fighter. A posto, allora, raga, iniziamo immediatamente. Allora, rec, stream, PC. Posto. Iniziamo immediatamente. Apro Fightcade. Allora. Tanto cattura la finestra. Ah, c'è un altro torneo, vabbè. Questo è il torneo al quale mi sono iscritto ieri. Mi sono iscritto l'altro giorno. Ce n'è uno anche per coso. Per sabato che devo ricordarmi di iscrivermi. Ancora non mi sono iscritto. Tanto vabbè, pensiamo al torneo di domani. Peraltro lì avanti non c'è, ok. Vediamo un po'. Hit the boxer. Quindi sicuramente giocherà Dudley. Si fa chiamare così. Ho bisogno di riprendere un attimino la mano con 3S perché non ci gioco da un po'. Copas, com'è? Oggi non mi sta sfidando nessuno. Ci sono giorni che manco apri il gioco e manco apri il server e ti sfidano in 500, ti sfidano.
Now, find a new rival.
Man of Tekken. Man of Tekken.
Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Prepare for battle. Yeah, I've been waiting for this. Well, I got the picture.
Ma dai! Ah, ho capito.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this. Well, I got the picture. Prepare to strike. Now.
Buonanotte, sbagliato.
Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Well, yeah, I got a picture. Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
Non l'ho fregato. Non l'ho fregato. Tra virgolette, ho fregato con lo scioglie.
Engage.
Bravo.
You win. Now, find a new rival. Welcome to the world of Street Fighter. Well, I got prepared for battle. Are you ready? Go. Fighters ready. Engage.
Ok.
Final round. Go.
Vai. No, peccato. Due a 0.
You win. Now, find a new rival. Welcome to the world of Street Fighter. Well, yeah, I've been waiting for battle. Are you ready? Go.
No. No! Peccato, è andato male questo.
Into the heat of battle. Go for it. Now, find a new rival. Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Well, I got to speak battle. I'm waiting for this. Well, I got the picture.
Ha cambiato super, wow. Vuol dire che è sicuro di sé.
Go for it.
No! È stata colpa mia, raga. Devo mettermi in testa che se non entra, non faccio hit confirm, no? Se non entra il colpo, non devo confermare la super. Se hit confermo se non hit confermo la normal, non posso far entrare la super. Devo mettermelo in testa. Appunto, e poi rimango inculato. Così sì, va bene. 3-1.
You win. Now, find a new rival. Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Well, I got to battle.
Ah, Makoto.
Picture.
Makoto.
Fighters ready. Engage.
No!
Prepare to strike. Now.
Colpa mia.
You win.
E vai.
Yeah, I see. Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
Io penso che le persone sono deciso di ritirarsi. Mi sa che ha deciso di ritirarsi.
Are you ready? Go. You win.
Sei deciso.
Find a new rival. Welcome to the world of Street Fighter. Well, I got the picture. Prepare for battle. Yeah, I'm waiting for this.
Alex.
Well, I got the picture. Fighters ready. Engage. All right, that's cool. Fighters ready. Engage.
No play.
You win. All right, that's cool. Now, find a new rival. Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3.
Non capire, vabbè.
Prepare for battle.
Ah, ne faccio un'altra, sei visto?
I got the picture. Yeah.
Va a finire, cioè...
Prepare to strike. Now. Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
Non ho la soddisfazione che una volta ogni tanto sono io quello che vince.
You win. Yeah, I see.
Ah, ok, ha deciso di ritirarsi, basta. Ha detto ne ho preso... E il bello, raga... Era un rango C, era, Ricordiamo, un rango C. Non era un rango D, come nel mio caso. Era un fottutissimo rango C. Ah, Truce, un
Find a
italiano.
new rival.
Vabbè.
Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3.
Oh,
Prepare for battle.
e i comandi non vanno, mortacci loro. Oh. Salva. Ok.
Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Yeah, prepare for battle. Well, I got the picture.
Ok.
Fighters ready.
Ryu.
Engage.
Ryu è un autentico bastardo. Sia che perdo la super, ma quantomeno diciamo lo tengo a distanza. No! Vabbè, buono, buono. Sono più furbo lui, dai.
Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
questo è un Ryu che usa il cervello, cazzo.
Find a new rival. Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Well, hey,
Almeno
battle.
sono io che gioco troppo distinto, non è che questo usa il cervello.
Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
Ed ecco come tutta la mia serie, diciamo, di vittorie va a farsi scemare. E meno male che non sono match rankati. Meno male. Sono delle amichevoli. Devo fare il furbo. Allora, non è che devo fare il furbo, devo essere io più furbo. È meglio usare la terza super, perché in questo modo, diciamo, hai più possibilità di far stannare l'avversario. Vabbè, sono io per giudicare come gioca un tizio.
Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
Giudicare le scelte, il setup di un eventuale player. Porco dio. Sono prevedibile. Troppo. Sono troppo prevedibile, ragazzi. Non è che...
Go.
Prevedibile. Porco dio. E il fatto che sto Ryu si abbassa sempre, si abbassa. Continuamente abbassato sta. Non ne capisco la ragione. O si abbassa o salta in continuazione. Cioè, la scimmia praticamente fa. Ecco perché ecco perché la prima super, per carità, oh, se ti prende fa male, ma in un contesto del genere, cioè, non ottimizzi il danno, non ottimizzi.
Now.
Vabbè.
Find a new rival. Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Prepare for battle. Well, I got the picture. Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
Provo con Chun-Li poi, basta.
Are you ready? Go.
Ma che è? Cazzo sono forte. Vabbè, pure i parri aerei.
Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
Vabbè. Oh, alla fine ho voluto solo un gioco, cioè raga, come Papa non è che mi sto a lamentare troppo. io.
Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Prepare for battle. Yeah, I've been waiting for this. Well, I got the picture.
Metto Ryu, mi metto. Visto che abbiamo perso contro Ryu. Ripassiamo i fondamentali proprio.
Well, I got the picture. Prepare to strike. Now.
No, no, ok, fila il fatto. Matter always full. La sbaglio sempre, mannaggia.
Now, find a new rival.
Ah, Indianen. Ma l'ha cancellato. Vabbè. Che pizza però. Vediamo se riesco a sfidare qualcuno. Qualcuno che ha voglia di farsi un paio di match.
Now, find a new
Basta.
rival.
Ho già giocato abbastanza con te. Ah, veramente, ma io non sopporto quei player che ti spiano solo per spaccarti il culo, letteralmente. Ti lo fanno proprio per umiliarti a fondo. A me, per dire, l'altra sera mi è capitato un giocatore britannico, rango B, che mi ha sfidato. Oh, porca... Stavo dicendo, mi ha sfidato praticamente E praticamente
Now, find a new rival.
mi ha sfidato e poi ha fatto il culo, ma ha fatto... E nonostante io purtroppo, ragazzo, a parte che sono male al gioco, ma voleva che si incazzava per il fatto che io ripetessi sempre gli stessi errori in game. Ma dico, ma stai notando che... Ma non è tanto il fatto che lo notava, è proprio il fatto che rompeva i coglioni. E ti sto dicendo che non devi fare così, perché tu continui a fare, io non perdo tempo. E chi cazzo ti ha detto di sfidarmi, cioè... Cioè, chi cazzo ti sta dicendo di sfidarmi? Chi cazzo ti sta dicendo di sfidarmi se vedi che comunque non sono un giocatore al tuo livello? Chi cazzo ti sta dicendo di volermi sfidare? Cioè, porco dio, dico no. Ma lo stesso vale, così come vale per Street Fighter, così vale per King of Fighters, per Mortal Kombat, vale per Tekken. Cioè, odio quei player che proprio si devono accanire contro, diciamo, i principianti o contro contro i player che, diciamo, non riescono... Ah, ok. C'è un po' di lag. Cioè, proprio veramente, io quei player che si accaniscono non li tollero. Cioè, come io che magari, diciamo, sono un po' più skillato su Tekken, mi metto a massacrare uno che ha iniziato a giocare da 2 giorni, ma faccio un esempio, che non conosce nemmeno i fondamentali. Cioè, non sarebbe corretto. Cioè, mo che ti accanisci su un player che sai che è matematico che al 99% ti batta. Cioè... Cioè, che cosa ne ottieni? Ok, hai vinto, bravo, cioè però non è che hai fatto chissà che cosa.
You win. Now,
Porco cane, io dico no. Cioè, è una questione di senso logico, secondo me.
I got the picture here. Well, I got the picture.
Per dire, sono uscito da questo tizio, sono uscito almeno solo una volta a batterlo, sono uscito. Addirittura alla prima partita è successo praticamente che... È successa una cosa abbastanza stramba. Madonna come lagga. È successo praticamente che il primo round l'avevo vinto io perché praticamente gli ho sparato la super e lui mi stava... normalmente ho detto vabbè mo la para e mi punisce. No, è entrata e ho vinto io. Non si stava spiegando, diciamo, come è possibile che sia successa una cosa del genere. Un rango così basso che riesce a battermi in questa maniera. Cioè, mi stavo discriminando perché io ho rango D e lui rango B. Cioè, ma vai a giocare con quelli del rango 2, no? O hai paura che ti possano derankare? Io penso più la seconda. Intanto mi avevo massacrato. Bel match.
You win. Now, find a new rival. Welcome to
Ma tra l'altro mi sono distratto al fatto che stavo parlando. Quindi... Cioè dire che pure c'è pure un po' di lag, c'è pure un po' di lag, quindi non è proprio nelle condizioni ottimali del gioco. Madonna come sta laggando. No! Cioè raga, con tutto sto lag non ci sto capendo un cazzo praticamente.
strike. Now,
che cazzo stanno facendo i vicini? Ah, perché sto sentendo un rumore a manetta. Ma che cazzo stanno facendo? Ristrutturazione, ma stanno abbattendo il muro a martellate. Ah, perché è da oggi pomeriggio che va avanti. No! GG. Faccio questa e mi fermo, raga. Sto sentendo un po' di acidità di stomaco. Bisogna forse
Find a new rival. Welcome to the world of the street fighter. Well, I got prepared for battle. Fighters ready. Engage.
Dai, ce la posso ancora fare. Se non faccio stronzate ce la posso fare.
Prepare to strike. Now.
Sto praticamente. Io non vorrei dire, ma praticamente sono stato 3/4 del tempo a spammare. Cazzo. Ah, vinco io il round, si va al 2 pari, si va all'ultimo match. Vince lui, ha vinto l'ultimo set, vince l'FT3. Porco dio. Vai. 2 pari. Chi vince questa ha vinto, dai.
Now. Find a new rival. Welcome to the world of the street fighter 3. Well, I got prepared for battle.
Ah. Ha deciso di cambiare. Chun-Li. Let's go, Justin. No, scherzo. No, scherzo, non lo so fare, levo 37. Ma che cazzo stanno combinando? Letteralmente, no, scherzi a parte. Cioè, sto rumore è fastidiosissimo. Porco dio. Suka! Ah, benvenuto LOLbit 123B, grazie per il follow. Proprio una
Are you ready?
come trollare.
Go.
Se non faccio stronzate potrei aver vinto. Se non faccio stronzate il match è mio. GG. Ho vinto io. Dai. È stato un bel match, devo ammetterlo. Dovrei andare a farmi. Soprattutto, ragazzi, per rifarmi una doccia. Quindi mi conviene staccare, cazzo. E niente, ragazzi. Allora, per questa live è tutto. ci siamo divertiti, dai. Ho menato un po' le mani su 3S, abbiamo visto il podcast. Devo dire, magari d'ora in avanti cercherò di seguire di più i podcast di Triple KO perché mi piacciono, cioè mi piacciono i contenuti che vengono portati. Finora non mi era mai capitato di vederne uno, o almeno ho sempre visto, sono iscritto al canale ma non avevo mai visto nulla. Diciamo quello di oggi dedicato ai pad e gli stick, diciamo, essendo un argomento che mi toccava personalmente, ho detto, ah, guardiamolo. Ho detto, guardiamolo su Twitch, perché l'intenzione mia all'inizio era fare solo 3S oggi, anzi, inizialmente volevo fare Tekken 7, volevo fare. Poi ho detto, ma siccome domani c'è il torneo di 3S, mi conviene allenarmi per 3S. E abbiamo fatto abbiamo fatto 3S. Con l'occasione del podcast ho detto, faccio una cosa e l'altra e vaffanculo. E in effetti è stata la cosa migliore. Io che dire, raga, per il resto vi saluto e noi ci rivediamo alla prossima.